This is APCO Forum, powered by APCO Worldwide, an advisory and advocacy communications firm. Now, here's your host, John Defterius.
Hello and welcome to APCO Forum, timely conversations, catalyzing progress on global topics. I'm John Defterius of APCO Worldwide, joining you today from London. It's been a busy autumn calendar of multilateral events, starting with, of course, the UN General Assembly, the G20, the B20, and most recently with COP26. And it seems like we have a sense of urgency. I put that down to the Covid-19 pandemic and people trying to catch up for lost time, if you will. We're going to be kind of bringing the threads together to see if there's a link between the start of the autumn and to the end of 2021 and what it means for 2022. We have a fantastic panel, but let's bring in our expertise from APCO Worldwide. Anna Tuchel is the head of Global Strategic Initiatives and Partnerships for APCO. And I laid it out there in the umbrella lead, if you will, Anna. What did you make of this very busy season and then finishing up on COP26?
Thank you very much, John. A pleasure to be with you and our exceptional panel here. And you're right that it's been a really busy past couple of months. And so what we've done is we took stock of critical discussions and announcements from global fora, starting with the UN General Assembly to ASEAN Summit to the G20 ministerial, and we're looking actively at COP. And there are 6 main cross-cutting themes that have emerged that really present opportunities for the private sector, but I think any organization to come together and think about innovative partnerships ahead. Climate is first and foremost on the global agenda, and there's an opportunity to not just accelerate decarbonization and net zero commitments, but for a private sector really to look at behavioral change drivers, policy advocacy, consumer mobilization, and a host of topics for engagement. Inclusive economic recovery. Kristalina Georgieva famously said that we're looking at divergent recovery. And so lower income and middle income countries are still in the eye of the Covid-19 storm, and any engagement needs to factor that in, especially looking at focusing on micro and medium-sized enterprises and then integration to the global economy. Gender, youth, and equality is paramount. Driving forward the agenda on upskilling, reskilling, and creating more inclusive and equitable workforce for tomorrow is central. Prevention, preparedness for future crises, especially in the context of climate and health. Looking at transparency and accountability, both in corporate reporting, but also broadly speaking on sustainable governance, procurement cycles, climate metric reportings, and the role of data and privacy protection. And of course, the biggest underpinning for all of this is the 6th theme, which is the promotion and equitable dissemination of vaccines. So vaccines today are central, not just saving lives, but also restarting economies and preventing any future COVID variants and setbacks. And so private sector and multilateral organizations are looking for innovative ways to come together around this critical priority. And I know that WHO Foundation and COVAX are leading the charge there.
Great, Anna. That's a very good foundation for our discussion here. Karin Ryder is the global head of ESG and sustainability at the APCO Group, one of the world's largest employers. And it's great to have Amal Ridan. She's the Tunisia youth delegate to COP26 and a World Economic Forum, a global shaper, joining us here in the APCO Forum. Karin, let's start with you and what Anna was talking about. This was a crowded agenda, but I'm wondering if it lived up to expectations, and I'll ask them all the same question from a youth perspective. But from the APCO view right now, did we deliver? Because it seems like the private sector's ready to act. Did the governments come together smoothly?
I think so. I mean, the signals that we're seeing are very positive, right? There's many commitments that are being made. You're talking about delivery. I think that will be the proof point over the next few years, how we're turning all these commitments into action. What we find a little bit missing is that people angle, right? We talk a lot when you talk about ESG, the focus here was very much on the E, but we need to make sure that we bring the S in a lot more. We're talking about investments in new technology and, financing of the transition. But what we need to talk a lot more about is the prioritization of investments into people. How do we make sure, A, that we have the right skills to make this transition happen? Because you need the people to do that, right? We're not just the cause of climate change, but we also need to be the solution. And then it's how do you ensure that the people that are impacted by this transition in jobs, that they're not being left behind. And I think that's where we would like to see the emphasis a lot more. Anna has mentioned upskilling and reskilling. And there, I think we need more government action as well in terms of steering the financial flows in that direction.
Corinne, if I can ask you a follow-up here, there's a big concern because there are shortages, as you know, in the employment world, and that must put a lot of pressure on ADECO trying to find solutions. And can you upskill and retrain fast enough is the key question in this COVID-19 recovery phase.
I think you can. I mean, we see very new and innovative talent solutions emerging. During COVID, for example, we had employment bridges where we were very fast moving people from industries that were sort of not really needing that much talent into other industries, but then sort of placing them back once demand was picking up. And we see it in other areas as well. And I think that's what is really encouraging, and what Anna mentioned as well, it's the need for partnership, right? I think it's in all our interests that we invest together into the upskilling and reskilling because it's in the interest of everyone.
Mal Ridan of Tunisia, it's great to have the youth voice, if you will. The former U.S. President Barack Obama gave a very impassioned speech at COP26 and said to your generation, don't lose the spirit and continue the good fight here. What did you make at the end of the day, what came out of COP26? And was it the blah, 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 or something concrete you can hang your hat on?
Thanks, John, and thank you, everyone. Well, it was my first COP, and I can tell how motivated I was. It might be surprising, but I've come across a lot of young people and young females during the COP, and I think that's something really positive to see in the COP halls, despite all the logistical aspects. So I personally, along with my team of Tunisian young climate change negotiators, feel empowered, and even though some of the decisions that are there do not meet our expectations, I think we have to start somewhere, and I think a lot of pledges that have been made at the COP sets the scene and brings some optimism to what we're looking forward. As you were mentioning, so this is our generation, and we have to fight or advocate for what's coming. And I think the discussions that have been made at COP may highlight that everyone feels concerned and that we need so many commitments. And maybe to follow up on what Karin was saying, it's always important to put the why also in the PPP. So today we speak, and I quote here the UNICEF's Generation Unlimited network mission to have the public-private youth partnership. And I think this is a key element to advocate for today.
Do you think, Anna, this leads to better multilateral cooperation? It was out of fashion under the Trump administration and some of the populist governments we've seen around the world. What does this autumn tell us about the partnerships that everybody's talking about in our session here in the forum?
Thanks, John. I think actually I'm really optimistic. Looking at the past week and a half at Glasgow and the types of partnerships that came to fruition. To me, it was never about sort of one big Paris Agreement moment, but a series of small sets of decisive victories. And I think in that regard, COP definitely delivered. I mean, look at sort of the partnerships landscape in front of us. The First Movers Coalition, a really groundbreaking initiative that was catalyzed by the World Economic Forum and the Special Envoy on Climate, Secretary Kerry, actually brings the hardest to abate industries together in trying to create demand for clean energy products. And Amazon, as part of that coalition, already made a pledge and commitment to be the purchaser of those cleaner products. So seeing competitors come together side by side in initiatives like this is really invigorating. Also seeing those lines of collaboration within sectors. So the multilateral development institutions committed to a joint streamlining initiative in its approach to nature. So you're looking at Asia Development Bank, Africa Development Bank, Inter-America Development Bank, actually working together in that regard. I actually really like what Amal said in needing to have a stronger youth voice at the table with these partnerships, because we are looking at this private to private, multilateral to private, academia, NGOs, but oftentimes youth networks and organizations are not represented in these initiatives. And I think if we want to build a more resilient future and take into account the next generation, I think we need to have them at the table. And I think COP was a good manifestation of some of this, but I think we definitely need to do more.
How about, Corinne, this world of work and the SDGs? Can you link the two together? Because I know ADECO is putting this front and center in terms of global partnerships. Give us an indication of what that means in practice, though.
Absolutely. We believe that, every single SDG is linked with the world of work. Typically, businesses look at the SDGs more from an individual perspective and sort of tie individual contributions they do to one specific SDG. So our industry links to this SDG and that. But we feel that you need to look at it much more broadly and the interlinkages between employment to the SDGs, and then take two lenses, right? How do we, as the world of work, impact the SDGs, but also what will the impact be of the actions that we're taking towards the SDGs on employment and the skills that we have? And we recently launched a campaign around that to really increase the level of awareness of the role that the labor market plays in achieving the SDGs. And for each SDG, we want to lay out, what are the steps that employers specifically can take around that, and how to more meaningfully drive action towards the SDGs from that perspective.
Corinne, one of the things that keeps on coming up is the fact that the COVID-19 pandemic fell disproportionately on women. So there's an injustice there. Do you think this is being recognized? For example, what can you do at ADECO to work with the international organizations to really do something about it in the developing world in particular?
We're working specifically probably more with employers, so our clients, to develop new pathways into the world of work for underrepresented groups, whether it's women, whether it's people with a disability, increasingly refugees as well. First, really understanding what are the skills that are missing. How do we upskill and reskill people to facilitate access to the labor market? But then I think the new angle that is increasingly coming up is how do you ensure lifelong employability? So it's not just the one-point access to the labor market, but how do you ensure that people actually stay in the labor market, particularly when it's impacted so heavily by all these new transitions that we're seeing, whether it's automation, digitalization, or the move to a greener and more circular economy. So that's where we're really specifically working with clients, that we're not upskilling or reskilling into a void, but that you're actually upskilling into existing jobs and match the skills that are required and the people with existing jobs.
Amal, you're at the World Economic Forum as a shaper, and I remember 2 years ago in Davos, I presented the question to the climate activists led by Greta Thunberg and said, are you actually sitting down with the oil and gas CEOs, for example, or those in industry to find solutions? Are we moving from the stage of shouting from the sidelines, rightfully so I may add, and then having a dialogue towards solutions on climate to get climate justice, if you will, particularly for a country like Tunisia?
Yeah, thanks for the question, John. So the network of the Global Shapers community is an initiative of the World Economic Forum, and it has hubs all over the world, and it belongs to the Tunis hub. And recently, within the frame of the Davos Dialogue Labs, we launched at Tunis hub a dialogue around net zero, and we try to have the discussion and interact about how is it like to reach net zero in Tunisia, and what do we need? And we've had a lot of interaction in that. We presented the outcomes of the dialogue to the Youth Recovery Report that was recently launched, and this has provided recommendations to world leaders and to government on how to update their policies, of course, on net zero, but also in other pillars. And to answer this question, I think today we're in a need to have the dialogue and to reach the common ground together. It's not a matter of switching to another solution out of sudden, but rather to try to lead the change together and to make sure to find the common ground an alternative that is sustainable. So if we're switching to another alternative, only this is going to be another bubble and we will be dealing with another problem. So I think it's important today to try to make the conversation led by several parties, several sectors. Here we're discussing or mentioning the partnerships, and again, SDG number 17. Also, if I can refer to the enhanced nationally determined contribution that Tunisia has just presented for COP26. It also emphasizes the need of the partnership, that we're making sure that all the sectors commit and pledge to reach the net zero goal set on the horizons of 2050. So I think it's important today to make sure everyone feels concerned, but not only from the perspective of the private sector, but also in terms of families, young people, to make sure that everyone feels the ownership and speaks the same language. So if you tell people 1.5 degrees Celsius compared to pre-industrial areas, this might sound as something super heavy on them, but if we get to actually explain to everyone and to make sure the dialogue actually happens, I think this is going to be crucial into making sure we achieve the goals of the Paris Agreement.
It's really paramount that the next COP, COP27, will be held in Egypt. And I think it's been quite some time since the least developed or the less developed country is actually going to be the convener of this important dialogue. And I'm personally really looking forward to what this would mean for the global community. I think it will have really strong voices and leadership both from Egypt and South Africa, probably the most vocal leaders across the African subcontinent on climate issues, but creating more of an inclusive dialogue with different stakeholders, I think is something that we will all be focusing on for the year ahead.
Great point there, Anna. Corinne, how do we move from handing out money to the developing world and look at co-investing? It was interesting, they talked about unlocking $130 trillion till 2050 in sustainable finance. They haven't hit the target of $100 billion a year in wealth transfer from the West to the South, if you will, from the industrialized countries to the developing countries. How do we hold countries accountable after COP26 and from the start of this season in the UNGA?
I think in the end, it's all about transparency as well, right? I mean, that's what we've been lacking a bit in terms of holding countries, but also corporations to account. It also means that we need much, much better data. Because I think right now there's differences in how things are being measured and what is being counted. And I think that provides a less ideal starting point to really see whether we're on track. I mean, we've seen all the commitments that have been made. I don't think at this point they're leading us to 1.5 degrees, what I've been reading these days. So I think it's even more important that we accelerate the measurement and the quality of data to then move forward to really have the sound picture and can then hold countries better to account to where they're really standing versus their pledges.
Yeah, maybe to echo what Karen was saying, I've been following some negotiations around finance and around the new quantitative common goal. And I think today we need urgently to have a definition for climate finance because we don't actually have one today. And this relates to what Karen was mentioning about transparency. I think it's important to have this definition set so that we're all, the accountability is there. And it was great to have this conversation started during the negotiations at COP26 with the aim to have a clear roadmap, and I hope that as COP26 is concluded, we have a clear roadmap for that. I think it is something really urgent today, and I look forward to see the outcomes of that.
Okay, let's give Anna the final word here on ESG and building that momentum. It's had a big impact on oil and gas investment, dropping by nearly in half in recent years, Anna. But how do you carry that momentum forward? And as Corinne was suggesting here, having accountability in your view?
Yes, I think one thing I've heard over the past week and a half in Glasgow is that we need more moving from MOUs to MODs, and we really need to. Both, I wholeheartedly agree with Corinne's point that we need better measurement, but we also need, I think, each sector, each company to take an honest look inward and identify both what they bring to the table, to the problem-solving table, and also the gaps that exist that other partners from government, from other private sector leaders, importantly NGOs, the future leaders and youth can bring to the table. And with that assessment in mind, really charter a new agenda for strategic partnerships, because not a single organization or sector or region can solve alone for those issues, that the challenging issues that we've just discussed. And so charting a bolder course for partnerships and being more honest with the gaps that we have as organizations and areas around which we can come together.
What a great conversation. That last 20 minutes or so sailed right by. Anna Tunkel of APCO Worldwide, Karine Reiter of the DECO Group, and Amal Ridan of Tunisia, a youth delegate to the COP26 and a World Economic Forum shaper. It's great to have you at the APCO Forum. APCO is hoping that these conversations will lead to a deeper understanding of the key global issues that we're faced with today and help organizations become catalysts for progress. Please visit apcoforum.com for further installments of the APCO Forum, where you can find our program on APCO's social media channels at APCO Worldwide, and subscribe to APCO Forum on your favorite podcast platform. I'm John Defterios in London. Thanks for tuning in to the APCO Forum. We'll see you next time.